Helen Bradley checked her reflection one last time, adjusting the collar of her navy blue dress. At 74, she still believed in looking proper for family dinners. Tonight was special. Her grandson Caleb was graduating college, and her son Michael had insisted she absolutely had to be there. What her family didn't know was that tonight would change everything forever. The house felt quiet without Frank. 3 years since her husband passed, and she still caught herself setting 2 cups for morning coffee. Frank had always been the sensible one about money. "Nell," he used to say, "you can't buy love with your checkbook." She should have listened, but maybe it wasn't too late to make things right. Her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. A text from Michael. Helen reached for her reading glasses, expecting details about dinner. What she read instead would spark a chain of events that would teach her family lessons they would never forget. "Mom, dinner's canceled. Britt doesn't want you there. You embarrass her in front of her clients." Helen stared at the screen. Another message appeared. "Also, can you cover Caleb's graduation party? 3,000 should do it." The phone slipped from her hands. She sank into the kitchen chair, her heart pounding. After everything she had done for them, every bill she had paid, every crisis she had solved with her checkbook. But now, something was shifting inside her. A quiet determination was building that would soon turn her family's world upside down. Helen walked to the old wooden desk in the corner, Frank's desk. She pulled out the thick folder labeled Family Expenses. Page after page of canceled checks, bank statements, credit card payments she had covered, evidence of everything that was about to end. $85,000 for the down payment on Michael and Britt's house. $650 every month for Britt's luxury car. $45,000 each year for Caleb's private college. $30,000 for Michael's food truck business that failed after 6 months. $15,000 for Britt's cosmetic surgery. $400 every month for their country club membership. $5,000 each spring for Caleb's vacation trips. The numbers blurred together. Over $250,000 in 5 years. Money from Frank's life insurance. Money from her teacher's pension. Money she had saved for 40 years. Money that had bought her nothing but disrespect. Her phone rang. Michael's name appeared on the screen. Helen let it ring. Then it rang again, and again. Let them wait. Soon they would understand what desperation really felt like. She thought about Frank's funeral, how Michael had shown up late because he was closing a real estate deal with Britt, how Caleb had left early to meet friends, how they had asked about the life insurance money before they asked how she was doing. They had made their choices. Now she would make hers. That night, Helen could not sleep. She made tea and sat by the window, watching the empty street. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow she would do something Frank would be proud of. Tomorrow her family would learn that their free ride was about to come to a very sudden stop. At 9 in the morning, Helen called First National Bank, the call that would change everything. "Good morning. This is Amanda Lopez. How can I help you?" "This is Helen Bradley. I need to cancel all automatic payments from my accounts." There was a pause. "All of them, Mrs. Bradley. You have quite a few set up." "Every single one. And I need to remove my son Michael from my accounts. He has power of attorney that I want to revoke." "I can help you with that. For security, I need to verify some information first." After answering the security questions, Amanda explained the process. "You have 89 recurring payments totaling $8,400 per month. I can stop them today, but some may take 1 to 3 business days to fully process." "That's fine. Stop them all." Helen felt a smile creeping across her face. The first move in her plan was complete. "Mrs. Bradley, this is a significant change. Are you sure about this decision?" Helen looked at Frank's picture on the desk. I'm absolutely sure. More sure than she had been about anything in years. Within an hour, her phone started ringing. First Michael, then Britton, then Caleb. Helen ignored every call. Let them panic, let them wonder. They would find out soon enough what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. She had a lunch appointment with Robert Hartwell, the family lawyer who had handled Frank's estate. Time for the next phase of her plan. Nell, what brings you in today? Robert asked as they sat in his office. I want to change my will and set up a trust to protect my assets. Robert raised his eyebrows. May I ask what brought this on? Family circumstances have changed. Helen's voice was calm, but inside she felt the satisfaction of someone who was finally taking control. They spent 2 hours going over options. Helen wanted everything changed. The house, the investments, the remaining life insurance money. Most would go to Zoe, her responsible granddaughter. Some would go to charity. Michael and Caleb would get the minimum required by law. Britt would get nothing. It was time to reward loyalty and punish greed. I'll have the papers ready by Friday, Robert said as Helen prepared to leave. You know, Frank always said you were stronger than you looked. I'm glad to see he was right. That evening, Helen's phone showed 37 missed calls and 15 text messages. She deleted them all without reading them. The desperation in their voices would only get sweeter as the days went on. The next morning brought a surprise. Caleb stood on her doorstep, looking tired and worried. The first casualty of her new policy. Grandma, my credit card got declined. The bank says you're not backing it anymore. Helen invited him in. That's right, Caleb, I'm not. But why? What did I do wrong? Sit down, honey. Helen poured him a glass of water. This conversation would be the first of many reality checks. When was the last time you visited me just to spend time together? Not when you needed money. Caleb shifted in his chair. I don't know. I've been busy with school. School I've been paying for. When was the last time you called to ask how I was doing? When was the last time you remembered my birthday without being reminded? Grandma, I care about you. You know that. Do I? Because all I see are the bills, Caleb. $7,000 in credit card debt. Rent I've been covering. Car insurance. Spring break trips. What have you done for yourself? Caleb looked down at his hands. I thought you wanted to help. I did want to help, but helping became enabling, and enabling became you taking advantage of someone who loves you. The lessons were just beginning. So what am I supposed to do now? What adults do: get a job, make a budget, learn to live within your means. But Grandma, I can't afford my apartment. Then find roommates, or move somewhere cheaper. Figure it out. After Caleb left, Helen felt drained but determined. She had taken the first step. But she knew the real fight was coming, and she was ready for it. 2 days later, Britt organized what she called a family meeting. Helen opened her door to find not just Michael, Britt, and Caleb, but also Britt's parents and Michael's brother, Kevin. Time for the big confrontation. Edith, we need to talk, Britt announced, pushing past Helen into the living room. This is my house, Britt. I decide who comes in. We're all family here. We're all affected by your decision. Helen looked at the crowd in her living room. Britt's parents, who she barely knew. Kevin, who she hadn't seen in 2 years. Either your guests leave or there's no conversation. Britt's face reddened. Fine. Everyone else, please wait outside. When the room cleared to just family, Britt took charge. Nell, your decision to cut off support isn't just hurting us. It's hurting everyone. My parents were counting on us to help with their medical bills. Kevin needs help because he lost his job. Since when am I responsible for Kevin's employment? Helen was enjoying watching them squirm. Michael finally spoke up. Mom, we've made mistakes. I shouldn't have sent that text. But we can work this out. What mistakes, Michael? Be specific. The message about dinner was cruel. That message was honest. It showed me what you really think of me. Britt leaned forward. Nell, families support each other. That's what families do. Interesting that you only mention family support when it comes to my money. Where was the family support when I spent last Christmas alone? Where was it when I was sick with pneumonia and none of you brought me soup? We're all very busy, Britt said defensively. Too busy for your own mother? Helen turned to Michael. When was the last time you asked about my day? My health? My feelings? Michael stared at the floor. You can't answer because you never have. You call when you need money. You visit when you need money. You remember I exist when you need money. Caleb spoke up. Grandma, I'll lose my apartment. Then get a job. But I'm in school. Zoe works and goes to school. She's never asked me for a penny. That's different, Britt snapped. How is it different? Zoe's always been more independent. No, Zoe learned responsibility because I didn't enable her the way I enabled all of you. Helen stood up. I want you all to leave now. Mom, please, Michael begged. We can fix this. You can fix your own problems. I'm done fixing them for you. The satisfaction of finally saying no was overwhelming. As they filed out, Britt turned back. You're going to regret this, Nell. When you're old and alone, you'll remember this day. I'm already alone, Britt. I've been alone for 3 years while funding your lifestyle. A week later, Helen got a call from Robert Hartwell. The next phase of their desperation was beginning. Nell, Britt hired a lawyer. She's trying to challenge your mental competency. On what grounds? She claims you're not thinking clearly, that someone influenced you to make these changes. Helen felt her anger building, but also a grim satisfaction. They were getting truly desperate now. What do we do? Don't worry. I have Amanda Lopez from the bank ready to testify about your clarity during the account changes. Plus your medical records show perfect mental health. This won't go anywhere. It didn't. Britt's lawyer dropped the case within 2 weeks. Another failed attempt to restore their cash flow. Meanwhile, the consequences were piling up for her family. Michael and Britt sold their big house and moved to a small apartment. Britt took a second job. Michael started doing consulting work on weekends. Their marriage was showing strain. The lifestyle Helen had funded was crumbling, and they were learning what their choices really cost. Caleb dropped out of his expensive private college and enrolled in community college. He got a job at the campus bookstore. For the first time in his life, he was learning to budget. But it was Zoe who surprised Helen the most. Her granddaughter called one evening. Grandma, I heard about everything. I want you to know I support your decision. Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me. I've watched them take advantage of you for years, especially British. I tried to talk to Dad about it, but he always made excuses. I should have done this sooner. You did it when you were ready. That's what matters. 3 months after the bank changes, Michael showed up at Helen's door alone. No agenda, no requests. Just her son, looking tired and humbled. The transformation was beginning. Mom, can we talk? They sat in the kitchen where Helen had read that first cruel text message. I owe you an apology, Michael said. Not just for the message, for everything, for years of taking you for granted. I'm listening. Britt pushed me to ask you for money, but that's not an excuse. I should have said no. I should have protected you from her greed. Why didn't you? because it was easier to use your money than to face our problems. We were living way beyond our means. $4,000 beyond our means every month. Helen nodded. I know. Losing your support forced us to look at reality. We're getting financial counseling now, learning to live within our actual income. How do you feel about that? Scared, but also relieved. For the first time in years, we're not lying to ourselves about money. They talked for 2 hours. About feelings, not finances. About Helen's loneliness and Michael's guilt. About Frank and what he would have wanted. When Michael left, Helen felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope for a real relationship with her son. 6 months after the confrontation, Helen was living a completely different life. She had signed up for the art classes she always wanted to take. She volunteered at the literacy center downtown. She was planning a trip to Ireland with her friend Dorothy. She had even started dating Walter, a fellow volunteer at the literacy center. Nothing serious, but it felt good to have someone ask about her day. The family dynamics had shifted too. Zoe visited regularly, and their relationship had grown stronger. Michael came by every few weeks, and their conversations were genuine now. Even Caleb had started stopping by, usually to ask for advice rather than money. But the biggest surprise came when Caleb graduated from community college with honors in business management. "Grandma, I want to show you something," he said during one visit. He pulled out a business plan. "I'm starting a lawn care service. I saved $3,000 from my bookstore job." "That's wonderful, Caleb. Tell me about your plan." They spent an hour going over his budget, his target customers, his equipment needs. Caleb had thought through every detail. "I want to ask you for something," he said finally. Helen tensed, expecting a request for money. "I want your advice. You taught for 40 years. You understand planning and organization. Will you help me think through the business side?" Helen smiled. "I'd be honored to help." Within 6 months, Caleb's business was thriving. He had hired 2 employees and was looking at expanding to neighboring towns. On Helen's 75th birthday, she hosted a small party. Zoe was there along with Caleb and Michael. Walter came, and so did Dorothy and several friends from the literacy center. Notably absent was Britt, who had maintained her distance since the legal challenge failed. As Helen looked around her living room at the people who genuinely cared about her, she felt Frank's presence. He would have been proud of what she had done. "You know what the funny thing is?" she told Dorothy later as they cleaned up. "I thought I was losing my family when I stopped being their bank. Instead, I found out who my real family was." Caleb overheard her comment. "Grandma, I need to thank you for something." "What's that, honey?" "For teaching me to fish instead of giving me fish. I'm happier now than I ever was when you were paying for everything." Helen hugged her grandson. "You're welcome, and I'm proud of the man you've become." As the evening wound down and the guests left, Helen sat in her favorite chair by the window, the same chair where she had made that first phone call to the bank. She thought about Britt's warning from months ago. "You'll regret this when you're old and alone." But Helen wasn't alone. She was surrounded by people who valued her for who she was, not what she could give them. She had friends who called just to chat. She had interests that fulfilled her. She had a granddaughter who loved her unconditionally, and a grandson who had learned to stand on his own feet. Most importantly, she had her self-respect back. The phone rang. Michael's number appeared on the screen. "Hi, Mom. I just called to say goodnight, and to tell you I love you." "I love you too, son." After hanging up, Helen looked at Frank's picture on the mantel. "You were right, honey. I couldn't buy their love, but I could teach them what real love looks like." She turned off the lights and headed upstairs to bed. Tomorrow she had art class in the morning, and volunteer work in the afternoon. Walter was taking her to dinner at a new restaurant. At 75, Helen Bradley had finally learned the most important lesson of her life. She had learned to value herself as much as she valued others, and it had made all the difference. As she drifted off to sleep, Helen smiled. The revenge had been sweet, not the cruel kind that destroys everything, but the satisfying kind that teaches important lessons and builds something better from the ashes of what came before. Her family had learned what they really valued, and Helen had learned that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is say no.